How the Rhinoceros Got His Skin by Miles Kelly. Illustrated by Darren Parton. Once upon a time, on a lonely island on the shores of the Red Sea, there lived a man. He owned nothing in the world but his hat and his knife, and a cooking stove, of the kind that you must particularly never touch. The man was very happy. He had nothing to worry him, except one rhinoceros who lived in the very middle of the island. He had a horn on his nose and two piggy eyes. In those days, the rhinoceros's skin fitted him quite tight. There were no wrinkles in it anywhere. He had no manners then, and he has no manners now, and he never will have any manners. One day, the man took flour and water and currants and plums and sugar and other delicious things and made himself one big cake. It was 2 feet across and 3 feet thick. He put it on the stove and he baked it till it was all beautifully brown. It smelled yummy. The rhinoceros smelled the delicious smell. Just as the man was going to eat his cake, along it came. In 2 shakes of a tail, the man climbed to the top of a tall palm tree and hid. The rhinoceros upset the stove with his nose, and the cake rolled onto the sand. Then he spiked that cake on the horn of his nose, and he ate it all up. Every last crumb. Then the rhinoceros went away, waving his tail, back to his home in the very middle of the island. The man came down from his palm tree and cleaned up the mess. As he cleaned, he thought of a plan, and he sang to himself, "Them that takes cakes, which the man bakes, makes dreadful mistakes." A few weeks later, there was a heat wave in the Red Sea. It was so hot that everybody took off their clothes. The man even took off his hat. In those days, the rhinoceros's skin buttoned underneath with 3 buttons. The rhinoceros took off his skin to have a cooling swim in the sea. The rhinoceros did not say sorry to the man for eating his cake. He had no manners then, as he has no manners now. And he never will have any manners. Splash! He waddled straight into the water and blew bubbles through his nose, leaving his skin on the beach. But the man found the skin and he smiled a big smile. Then he danced 3 times round the skin and rubbed his hands. The man filled his hat with crumbs. He had plenty because he never ate anything but cake, and he never swept out his camp. Then he took that skin and he shook that skin and he scrubbed that skin and he rubbed that skin. At last it was as full of dry, stale, tickly cake crumbs and some burned currants as it could possibly be. Then the man climbed to the top of his palm tree and waited. When the rhinoceros came in from his swim, he put on his skin and buttoned it up with the 3 buttons. And it tickled, just like cake crumbs in bed. Then he wanted to scratch, but that made it worse. Then he lay down on the sands and rolled and rolled. Then he ran to the palm tree and rubbed, and rubbed himself against it. He rubbed a wrinkle over his shoulders and another underneath and more on his legs. Bing! He even rubbed his buttons right off. It spoiled his temper, but it didn't make any difference to the crumbs, so he went home very angry and horribly scratchy. The man came down from his palm tree and felt quite pleased with himself. From that day to this, every rhinoceros has great folds in his skin and a very bad temper, all because of the cake crumbs inside. The end.